Hello everybody and welcome back to the space where we say that I can sleep. Depending on when you are listening to this, if you are listening to this via regularly scheduled release, then I hope you've been enjoying the first half of the new month. But if you are listening to this via early access, I hope you guys have been enjoying the first week of the new month. For me, the heat wave has definitely returned and I hate it. I wish the heat wave would just stay away. Stay back in July and June. Stop following me. I'm trying to end the year in a good note. You're ruining it. You're soiling it. Soiling it! But do you know what always puts me in a good mood? Doing these readings, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. So, as per usual, if you are enjoying these readings and would like for me to continue doing these readings, you can leave me likes, leave me follows, share my stuff, and follow me on all my platforms like the Patreon, where you can get exclusive stuff including early access for these readings at officially I Can Win, Spotify and YouTube at iKenSleep, and TikTok and Instagram at officially.iCanWin. Now let's continue on our ascension to Heaven Official's blessings. Therefore, the one who stole the fetus spirit had to be a female ghost, and the mother of that child. Locking down Ghost City and calling forth all the female ghosts who had been on the streets before and after the fire would therefore surely lead them to the culprit. Hua Cheng must have realized all this the moment they entered the side chamber. Shilian was quite sure of it. Suddenly, Lan Chang let out a great shout and seized her own belly in a mad fit. "Miss?" Shilian exclaimed. Lan Chang's face was ghastly pale, and she couldn't utter a single word. All of a sudden, it was as if something in her belly exploded. Her previously flat stomach swelled into an enormous ball, almost ripping her long dress apart as rolls of black smoke seeped out through the seams. The other female ghosts released their hold on her and slunk back while Lan Chang kept a death grip on her belly. She yelled in panic. "Stop this tantrum!" The fetus spirit in her womb was kicking up a storm. "Gaga, stand back," Hua Cheng calmly said. "It's fine," Shilian exclaimed. Lan Chang fell heavily on her knees, her face twisted with agony. "Listen to me. Be good. Won't you just be good? Stop this tantrum." "Miss Lan Chang, let it out first," Shilian urged her. Lan Chang shook her head wildly. "No. No, no, no. I will keep him in my womb and raise him well for sure. He won't go out and harm anyone anymore. Changshu, please, I beg you, don't take my son away. I've searched for him for centuries. Don't take my son. Don't hand him to those scoundrels in the heavens." As Shilian suspected, it seemed the ghosts in Ghost City were perfectly aware that he was from the heavenly realm. Lan Chang let out a shrill scream and rolled on the ground, hugging her belly as if it were no longer part of her body and was instead its own live creature. Shrinking at times, swelling at others, and twisting up, down, left, right. The black smoke grew thicker. The fetus spirit must have regained some strength after recovering in its mother's womb and was ready to start trouble again. The crowd of female ghosts rallied again to hold Lan Chang down, yet they were powerless to do so. At the sight of this predicament, the male ghosts on the left yelled, "We got this!" and rushed forward to restrain her. It was complete chaos. Shilin clenched his fists. "Miss Lan Chang, the fetus in your belly is much more powerful than you," he yelled. "You clearly can't bear to hurt it, but it can hurt you. You can't do anything. It will suck you dry sooner or later and break free. Let it out, now!" If Lan Chang refused to release the thing in her belly, soon she would be sucked dry and shredded to pieces by that savage spirit. This, of course, would leave Xilian no choice but to personally cut it out himself. Although it might be better than watching her be ripped apart by her own son, he really didn't want to do so unless there truly was no alternative. While he would prefer not to cut her open, he certainly couldn't let Huacheng do it for him. But Lancheng was stubborn as a mule, and even as she wailed in agony, she refused to relinquish the fetus spirit. This couldn't go on for much longer, so Xilian decided to take action. Xilian set his jaw in determination. "Excuse my imposition." However, when his hand reached for Feng Shen's hilt, Huacheng immediately held him back. "No need," he said darkly. A flash of golden light suddenly erupted from the center of Lancheng's belly, its rays blinding the ghostly crowd. They yelped loudly, fleeing to make room. "What the shit?" Xilian focused his eyes. When that golden light died down, the fetus spirit that had been so desperate to burst out seemed now to be somehow fettered, and Lancheng's belly had flattened to its normal state. The thing holding it back was a belt on her waist. At first glance, that belt looked quite ordinary, but when Xilian took a good look, he was astonished. "Why would you have something like this on you?" Even with its color faded from washing, Xilian could tell that the belt was an item of heavenly essence. Many ingenious spiritual weapons of the heavens only revealed their phenomenal abilities when protecting their masters in dire circumstances. Even though the embroidered patterns on the belt were heavily worn and damaged, Xilian was certain that it was an item only heavenly officials could possess: a golden belt. And by the look of its design, the belt had once belonged to a heavenly official of the upper court. Golden belts were considered a sophisticated gift in the heavenly realm, and the act of gifting one carried a special meaning. If a male official were to gift his belt to another, it was a gesture to signify affection, and the nature of that affection was evident. One could well imagine that something like a golden belt would not be so easily given away, and also not so easily lost. Xilian gaped. "Miss, could your child be—" He trailed off as he suddenly remembered where he was. Regardless of whether this was the lair of all evil, to inquire after the details of a woman's personal affairs in public was far from courteous. He immediately cut off. "No!" Lancheng instantly cried in response. "I haven't even said anything. What are you saying no to?" Xilian wondered. He asked instead, "Did you depend on this golden belt to sustain yourself throughout the past 700 or 800 years? The crowd of female ghosts were stunned to hear this. "Holy shit, Lancheng! You're that old? Didn't you always say you're only 300-something? No, she even said she was 200 once. You're falsifying your records." The fetus spirit had about 700 or 800 years of cultivation, so its mother could of course be around the same age. However, Lancheng didn't possess a grudge of equal weight. The golden belt's immense spiritual powers had doubtless been instrumental in enabling her stay in the corporeal world as an ordinary ghost for so long. If the father of that fetus spirit was a heavenly official, then the degree of its savagery made sense. A heavenly official having an affair with a mortal woman? Whether he'd ended up abandoning it or neglecting her. Whether he'd ended up abandoning or neglecting her, she had met a violent end with her baby forcibly torn from her womb. Now both mother and son were of the ghost realm, and the fetus had likely murdered countless others. No matter what, this case was no less serious than the case of Xuanji. It even seemed rather similar on the surface, which made it easy to determine how best to handle it. Xilian looked to Huacheng. "Sanlang, this miss. No need to say more." Hua Chang said. Do what you must. You needn't ask me. Shilian answered softly. Upon receiving permission, he turned to Lan Chang. All the ghosts were demanding more gossip. Lan Chang! Lan Chang! Who's your baby's dad? What an outrage! Did he only care enough to kill it but not bury it? Care to knock it up but not raise the kid? Just who is it? You gotta avenge yourself. Lan Chang clenched her teeth and stared hard at Shilian. Who else could it be? She didn't utter the name, but Shilian understood. Why don't you come back to the heavenly court with me? No! Lan Chang immediately shouted. Of course, it was useless for her to object. Willing or not, Shilian had to take her away, and he hardened his expression. This fetus spirit is exceedingly violent. Who knows how much blood is on its hands? The case has become too convoluted for you to continue to shield it. This matter must be confronted and reported to the heavenly court. Shilian stated solemnly. If that heavenly official is an honest one, or if there was some kind of misunderstanding between you, then we can have you and your child recognized and deal with the matter of its crimes after. If that heavenly official has wronged you or worse, then there's even more reason to demand justice. No matter what, the fetus spirit is your son, but also his son. How can anyone else interfere if the father is ignorant of this affair? The ghosts thought his speech made sense. Also, if they let Lan Chang haul her son up to cause a riot in the heavens, how exciting would that be? The bigger the chaos, the better. So they urged her. Yeah, Lan Chang. What are you afraid of? Go settle your score with the guy. If he won't recognize you, we'll burn down his temples. Shilian said to Hua Chang. I will make a trip to the upper court this instant and report this case. While Lan Chang protested, she knew she couldn't stop him. After snapping out of her shock, she suddenly knelt down and prostrated before Hua Chang. Changshu, thank you for your kindness and grace in sheltering me. Shilian was taken aback. It was out of desperation that Lan Chang set fire to Paradise Manor and broke the rules of the Ghost City, she continued. I am ever so sorry. Pray Changshu will not hold it against me. She had always been a sauntering shrew, but when she spoke now, it was like she was a different person. Many of those familiar with her watched in shock, but Hua Chang appeared unstirred, and he turned to Shilian. Gaga stopped by in too much of a hurry. I'll wait for you to come down again, and host you properly next time. Shilian nodded, and then took Lan Chang and rushed straight to the heavens. As he walked down the main streets of the heavenly capital, he announced in the spiritual communication array. Everyone, please make your way to the Palace of Divine Might. There is a matter that requires conference. He exited the array as soon as he was done, and didn't waste any time bringing Lan Chang to the Palace of Divine Might. She was but an ordinary ghost and couldn't enter the Golden Palace. So Shilian waited outside with her until Junwu himself arrived and granted permission for Lan Chang to enter. It didn't take long for the heavenly officials who were currently present in the heavenly capital to make their way to the hall, where they were met with the bewildering sight of a crude female ghost slathered in heavy makeup. She stood in stark contrast to the transcendence of the heavenly court. A black-clad heavenly official strolled in, and he paused for a moment when he saw what was in the center of the hall. This was Mu Qing. Lan Chang also glanced at him and immediately lowered her head, her lips quivering. Mu Qing showed no further reaction and only asked impassively, Your Highness, who is that woman? As at this address, Lan Chang's face changed. She looked at Xilian as if she were recalling something that she wasn't entirely sure of. Just then, both the Wind and Water Masters arrived. The pair of brothers looked quite similar to each other, with their matching fans and white robes gently fluttering. They painted a beautiful picture. Shi Qingxuan fanned himself as he spoke. Yeah, Temple Master. Why did you bring a lady ghost here today? Xilian was puzzled. Temple Master? What Temple Master? Of Puchi Shrine? Why the sudden address? Then he realized Shi Qingxuan probably meant Master of Thousand Lights Temple. He didn't know how to acknowledge the title and could only pretend he hadn't heard it. But Shi Qingxuan was cheerful as he greeted everyone around him, then turned to the ghost. Huh. The ghost Jiji has something in her belly? Why do I have the feeling that it's... He wondered aloud as he approached, looking like he wanted to touch her. Shi Wudu snapped his fan shut. Qingxuan! Qingxuan's hand instantly shrank back, and he tried to justify himself. I just thought there was an aura of evil and wanted to see if there was something dangerous. Shi Wudu continued to scold him. You're a man and a heavenly official. This is the Palace of Divine Might. How could you do something so unmannerly? No, don't turn into a woman either. Even in a woman's form, it's equally disgraceful. Change back right this instant. Ling Wen shook his head. He folded a stack of documents and reports under his arm and approached to place his hand on Lan Cheng's belly. After a moment, he dropped his hand and hummed. What a vicious fetus spirit. How many hundreds of years old? 700 or 800, Xilian answered. He gave an account of the 2 times he had met the fetus spirit, and how the fetus spirit's attack on a pregnant woman led him to find the female ghost, Lan Cheng. He didn't bring up the details of Huachang and Ghost City, and Lan Cheng herself naturally remained quiet on the subject. At the end, Xilian concluded. And that's how it came to be. I don't know if that heavenly official is still in this world, or still working with us, nor whether there is some misunderstanding in all this, nor whether he knew. That's why I brought this mess here. Fang Xin knitted his brows. If there wasn't a misunderstanding, and he knew about the mother and child, then it's simply irresponsible of him to leave them like that without a word. Pei Ming crossed his arms and commented leisurely. I completely agree with General Nanyang. This is far too irresponsible. Don't know which heavenly colleague this discarded baggage belongs to, but if he's on duty, he best come forward. As he finished, he felt countless eyes on him. Silence had descended upon the Palace of Divine Might. A moment later, Pei Ming wondered aloud. Are you all having some sort of misunderstanding about me? Shi Qingxuan stopped fanning his fan. I don't think it's a misunderstanding. More like we know you too well. Pei Ming immediately defended himself. It wasn't me! Everyone laughed dryly, and even Shi Wudu and Ling Wen looked unconvinced by his denial. Pei Ming grew frustrated, and he supported his temple with his hand as he explained earnestly. Well, I've had some flings with women of the ghost realm before, but I really don't recognize this one. If those words of his were to be taken seriously, they were believable. How could the man himself not know with whom he shared a past? Many criticized Pei Ming's promiscuity, but he had never denied any affairs and never denounced anything he'd done. It wasn't like he couldn't afford it. Unless they behaved like Shunji, women who had affairs with him were lavished with wealth and sweetness. They were all guaranteed a lifetime of riches and care until they no longer wanted to associate with him. If Lan Cheng truly had a fleeting affair with Pei Ming while she was alive, she shouldn't have suffered having her womb ripped open and her son stolen from her, or his becoming a vicious ghost. Besides, Pei Ming had high standards when it came to women. He only dallied with those of extraordinary appearance, and he also preferred beauties with a natural look. As everyone in the hall could see, Lan Chang wore such a heavy layer of makeup that her real features were indiscernible, and her general looks, class, and behavior were a far cry from the lovers Pei Ming usually chose. So, when he claimed he wasn't to blame, everyone silently somewhat believed him. Except it was only silently and somewhat. When an occasion to see General Pei get checkmated presented itself, how could they not indulge in the fun? And so, they stood by and watched him argue with smiles on their faces. Whether any member of the crowd was convinced depended entirely on their current mood. At first, Shilian also thought the father was more than likely Pei Ming. He had a track record, after all. But as he studied Pei Ming's expression, Shilian grew less certain. Pei Ming didn't seem to be lying. He recalled Hua Chang saying that there was nothing to fear, as Pei Ming wasn't a shady fellow. Or something along those lines. After some contemplation, Shilian continued. Miss Lan Chang originally responded ambiguously, asking, "Who else could it be?" So, I also assumed. But since General Pei denies such claims, maybe there's been some misunderstanding. Besides, it can't be the same person every time. So why don't we ask around? Unexpectedly, Lan Chang spoke up. "It's not him." Shilian was taken aback and turned to him. "It's not him," Lan Chang repeated. Ling Wen said coolly. "What? So it's not?" Shi Wudu also politely said. "So it actually isn't." Pei Ming turned to Shi Wudu and Ling Wen. "I already said it wasn't. The two of you are adding insult to injury. Just you wait." The heavenly officials were briefly disappointed, but then they grew even more excited. After all, Pei Ming was always the one generating wanton scandals. If it were him, it would be nothing new. But if he wasn't to blame, that meant there was likely another male official, present or not, who had instigated a new wave of excitement. How could they not be thrilled? Earlier in Ghost City, Lan Chang had hinted that the man in question was Pei Ming. But now, she denied it. Shilian felt something was amiss, but he made no effort to express his suspicion. Then who is it?" he inquired. Lan Chang stared squarely at him, her eyes unmoving. "You!" Shilian thought she wasn't finished. "What about me?" "I said, the man is you!" Lan Chang declared.